Fathers, once again at this hour and upon this time that we, as always, we come to you with a humble heart. Thank you, dear Lord, once again for allowing us to come out on a beautiful Sunday morning to come together as brothers and sisters in Christ to go over what thus saith this, your word. And as always, dear Lord, we ask special blessings upon those that are here and those that still may be even on their way. And we ask, as always, that your spirit would be in the very midst of what it is we're about to study today, and that you will guide us and direct us. And dear Lord, may we as always leave here with more than what we brought to the door. For it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. 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 Good morning to everyone. Did anybody call Millie and tell her to set her clock back? Because every year she always gets that thing wrong. And I can actually say that publicly because when she comes to she always reminds me of it. You remember when I came to church and church was over? I was like, yeah, Millie, I remember it. Well, as we all know today, we are opening up unit number 3. And anytime in our quarterly studies, we open up unit number 3. That means in a few short weeks, we'll be closing out unit number 3. So we only have 4 lessons to go that will close out our fall quarter series of lessons. And as we know, this particular quarter, the overall theme was that of learning to honor God. And in unit 1, we opened with beginning with obedience. Unit 2 dealt with obedience in worship. And today we're dealing with obedience in society. I don't know about you, but when I read that theme, obedience in society, I immediately went back to unit number 2. You remember the lesson we had that dealt with obedience in worshiping God and God alone? Because in that lesson, if you remember, we talked about how in the Ark of the Covenant, the testimony was put in the Ark. Now, what was the testimony? It said the testimony was put into the Ark of the Covenant. You guys remember what the testimony was? I kind of played with you by saying whose testimony? Well, the Ark of the Covenant, the testimony that was put in the Ark of the Covenant was actually what we know to be that of the 10 Commandments, the laws themselves. Of course, in the King James translations, they call them the tables. In teaching, they call it the 2 tables of the law because those commandments are broken up into 2 different sections. You'll find that the first table deals with your one-on-one relationship with God. The second table, which is the next 6 of the 10 Commandments, deals with your one-on-one relationship with your fellow man in society. In other words, it's how you get along and deal with other people in the world and how you conduct yourself before God. We have to keep in mind that when we talk about these commandments or the 10 Commandments, all the laws was built upon those 10. If you were tuned into some of the past sessions of teachings on the 613 Levitical laws, you'll find that each law was built upon one of the commandments, and they just expounded them even further. And you'll find today's lesson does that exact same thing. And when we talk about the law, last week we brought up how the law, oftentimes we look at it as what you can't do, all the prohibitions. You can't do this, you can't do this, you can't go here, you can't do this, and so on and so on. But you'll find the law was much more than that. This is why the children of Israel, I could say, loved the law so much and kept it so close because it also was a guide to them. It was a roadmap for how they was to conduct their life in society before God in this world. Because you'll find besides what you couldn't do, it also told you what you were supposed to do. In other words, when you came to worship, it said this is how you are to come to worship. When you do worship and give a sacrifice, this is how you are to give your sacrifice. When you come before the Lord, this is how you are to groom yourself. This is how you are to dress. When your fellow brother is in peril, any kind of a trouble, this is what you are expected to do. When the widows need help, this is what the community is supposed to do. So there was many things telling them what they were supposed to do, not just what they couldn't do. But today's lesson kind of ties a little bit of both of them in. Because in today's lesson, you'll find by telling you what you can't do, is also telling you what you are supposed to be doing. So that's what the lesson deals with. But you'll find that when we talk about this law, God's law is not like man's law. You'll find that man's law is not really about justice. I don't think. We might debate that this morning. Man's law is all about who wins, versus true justice. Because, you look at justice, what is the symbol of justice? There's a symbol that's used for justice system. What is it? Yeah, it's a woman. They use a woman because a woman is compassionate. And some say she can think faster than a man. But they put a woman up there. She has a sword. She has a, correct, son. She has a sword which recognized has all power to execute judgment. For what's fair, or should we say what's innocent, guilty, has power over all that. You'll find it also has a scale. That means things are to be taken equally. But lastly, she has a blindfold, which means there's no bias. You don't see people. She's just judging on pure justice. That's how God does things, but man doesn't. And what I mean by that is you look at our justice system, and these educated folks on the law, you'll find that you have a defense attorney. Defense attorney is responsible for doing what exactly? Defend you. Allegation been put against you or whatever, trying to get you off. But that defendant can know, or defense attorney rather, can know that you are guilty. Know you're guilty, but they're still going to defend you to say you're innocent so they can win the case. So is that about justice, or is it about winning the case? The same thing can be said for a prosecuting attorney. They're designed to lock you up, put you away. But that prosecuting attorney can get evidence to know that you're innocent. But if they can get away with it, they won't present that evidence. Because it's all about, I have to win this case. So long as they win, they're happy. But that's not justice. That's just all about winning the case so they can get another case and make more money on top of money on top of money. In other words, they don't have justice in mind in most cases. And you'll find that this is how they, I could call it this way, they pervert the law in the things they do. Because keep in mind, they are educated on the law, but they follow the letter of the law. They go to school and they have so much jargon with the way our laws is written to try to get around people perverting the law that nobody even understands it. You'll see, though, you ever seen a law, it'll say, paragraph 2 of section 8 of Penal Code 7 states that the pursuant of so-and-so, and you're like, what are they saying? Because it's all about how man plays with the law to use words to win cases. The best example I can give you in practical application is that we've all been in this situation where mama has told you, don't let me ever see you doing that again. We've all been there. And that's called the letter of the law. Don't let me ever see you doing that again. But just as soon as mama leave, you start doing it. And one of your siblings may say, didn't mama say she won't ever want to see you doing it again? And your response is she here to see me doing it? Because that's how the law is. Because see, that's the letter of the law. But what God has is the spirit of the law. And that the spirit of the law is intent that you are never, ever to try to do that again. That's how you follow the spirit of it. But man tends to try to pervert it and move it off, let's say, in their own direction. Because it's not about justice, it's just about winning. But you found with God, he's about what's being fair and that are being just. And you'll find also that he's not a respecter of persons. In this lesson we have today, which is entitled Obedience in Society, I'm sorry, that's the theme, Obedience in Justice, I think it was. In this lesson that we have, Obedience in Justice, you'll find that what the writer deals with is the justice system primarily, from the standpoint they're coming from. But keep in mind, this is building upon the commandments. So it can be used in the justice system. It can be used in this church. It can be used in your home. These things can be used on the job, what we're dealing with today. So just keep those thoughts in mind as we break down this lesson today. Now, for those of you who may be using the Bible, we're coming out of Exodus, which is the second book of the Bible, the second book of what's known as the laws. Exodus, the 23rd chapter, starting at verse 1, is where we're coming from. The first verse says these words, "Thou shalt not raise a false report. Put not thy hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness." Now, you all know my style of teaching. It's the expository or the exposition style where you break down every part of a phrase, every sentence of it. Because I would like to say it this way. Sometimes a little bit is written, but a whole lot is said. If there was someone in here, but it's not, if there was someone in here who does not regularly attend Sunday school, the way I'm going to start this off, they're probably going to say, this is going to be a long class, and this is the way you teach. Because I'm going to start off with this, thou. I'm going to stop right there. The first word. But here's the question, what does thou mean? You mean you. You just talking to me? You said you. What does it mean? What does thou mean? Okay. It's basically you're talking about yourself, looking at yourself, what thou means. The reason why I bring that up is it's so easy for folks to say somebody else. You know, you've heard it before. Man, that preacher really was talking about y'all today. Like, weren't you at church? You know, he's talking about you. Keep in mind with the Bible, as far as the written word goes, is known as part of what's known as special revelation. In other words, it's the way in which God speaks to us. So whenever you look at the Bible, look at it as God is speaking to you because it is the living word. And you have to look at it as God is speaking to you. So when he starts off, he's saying thou, which means, guess what? You. So you have to look at yourself. This is a reflection back upon the previous lessons in dealing with obedience. And we talked about, you remember in the obedience and offerings? And I said these are three things that are similar. They're saying the same thing, but they can be different. And the first one I said is this, is what do you have to offer? And that what you have to offer is not about what you're bringing tangibly to the table. It's what is you as an individual, as a person, what are you bringing to the table? Such as when you're supposed to give your offering, you're supposed to be what kind of a giver? A cheerful giver. So that's what you're looking at as the person themselves. Today, we partaking of the Holy Sacrament of Communion. And it says before you partake of it, you have to do what? What's the first thing you do? Examine yourself. Not everybody else. You have to examine yourself first. As Michael Jackson's song says, take a look in the mirror. You know, look at yourself first. So here, God is speaking to us. He said, thou shalt not raise a false report. That word raise means to lift up. That word raise means to support. That word raise means to uphold. But it says here, thou shalt not raise a false report. Now, this one should be an easy one. Now, I'm looking for the right response. What is a false report? I hear unanimously, everybody said it's a lie. Well, I'm glad you said that. I'm digging bush before I go on. Well, remember just now I said man plays with words in the letter of the law? You're exactly right. And what I mean by this is, I'm glad you guys say that, because everybody's on the same page says a lie. Sometime in life, guess what? You have to be direct, don't you? Seriously, you have to be direct. Now, of course, there's a way in being direct, but you have to be direct. But sometimes we don't be direct because what we say, we don't want to hurt their feelings. But actually, you're causing more harm than good by not being direct. So some things sometimes just have to be said to keep you on the right track. Here you'll find that a lie is just that. You could have said, well, I didn't tell a lie. I just told a story. That we say in King William, a story. I don't know if y'all said it right or not. I told a story. What's a story? Isn't that a lie? Or they would say, well, I didn't really tell a lie, Butch, but I kind of stretched the truth a little bit. You stretch the truth, but you say it's not a lie. You say, well, I embellish the truth a little bit. You hear that one? Or they say, well, I told a falsehood. Now, here's the one that's really amazing. Ms. Golden, they would say these words. Well, I lied, but I told a white lie versus a bold-faced black lie. I'm like, wait a minute, what's the difference there? But you'll find we'll sugarcoat words, and we won't be direct. But you'll find in God's realm, truth is truth, right is right, wrong is wrong, and guess what? A lie is a lie. You can dress it up all you like. It's still what you call a lie. So when they tell a lie, you have to call it out as what it is. You have to be direct about it. But in this world today, oftentimes we are not direct. Linda and I had this conversation just the other day watching the news. Sandra, Helen, Lenore, you could probably like this. Y'all the school system. Saw the news, it was showing Petersburg. And this what they were not being direct with folks. In Petersburg, they were showing how, the man's name was Dr. Tyree something. He was director of education. And he was trying to be proactive in reacting to a situation. He noticed that several students, or a lot of students, had been absent. And he did a little, mathematical equation by saying they've missed these many days in this short period of time by the end of the school year, they're on pace to miss these many days. So what does he do? Something I've never seen before. All the teachers put on these matching T-shirts, put them on school buses, and they went out into the neighborhood and went to these various homes. And they said, I understand your child is not here at the school, but here's what the school system offers. And they went down a whole list, gave them literature and all, like what the school can do and so on and so on and so on. I'm like, wow, these kids not coming to school. Then the next report shows, I guess you guys have seen how they said they're trying to stop affirmative action. Because they say everything is good now. Everything's fair now. Everything's just now. I'm like, well, I remember Trump pulled the sheet off a whole lot of people, and I can see that things a long way from being right, a long way from being fair. So they showed that and showed the job market and all this. But then when they went back to the school, but the kids weren't there, nobody weren't there, their response was, school is not fun. I said, that's interesting because nowadays you find parents are going into the school system telling the teachers what you're going to teach the child. But my point is, what is the parent teaching the child at home? Why isn't the parent as direct at home as they are in the school system? Because I guarantee you, none of y'all are going to tell your parents, I'm not going to school because it's no fun. Your parents would have told you something directly. This is what you're going to do. But you find all we're doing, all that's happening now is the kids being set up for failure. You're not having the education, and affirmative action disappears. Oh, that's 2 strikes against you right there. So what I'm getting at is sometimes you have to be direct. Here you'll find, guess what God's being? Direct. He doesn't say here, thou shalt not raise up a false report. He doesn't say, when you think about not supporting a lie. He doesn't say, will you consider just not to be involved with this? No, he gives the direct command. He said, thou shalt not raise a false report. Because it is a command. And a command has to be what? Direct. Because if you sugarcoat things, guess what? It's not come to fruition. It's like, I use a saying an old man once said, he said, rules without consequences ain't nothing but good advice. If there's no consequences, nobody's going to pay any attention to them. So sometimes you have to be direct. And God here is direct with people by saying, thou shalt not raise a false report. In other words, do not support a lie. Do not lift up a lie. Do not hold on to a lie. Because a lie is what? It's a lie. You can't get any more direct than that with it. It's plain and simple. You know, you can't keep saying, once again, I told a white lie. I stressed the truth. You know, some folks, I almost brought the person's name up just now because I caught myself. Because some of you in here have said this. Well, one of you in here have said this, you know what I'm talking about. A friend of all us, all of ours was running his mouth. You know, that guy's just talking. And then the person nudged me and said, look at so-and-so over there lying. I said, how you think he's lying? He said, his mouth moving, isn't it? You know, we've all seen folks like that. You know, so the lie doesn't change. He said, thou shalt not raise a false report. And then he says, put not thine hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness. So what is that saying? Put not thine hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness. Bush? Mm-hmm. 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 True. Did you hear something? We didn't? Interesting subject you brought up. Let me give you a direct one now. I might have taught this before, I'm not sure. What Diggin Bush just brought up, can you repeat that? Now, here's a question. Is that person wrong for doing that? I see something wrong happening. I'm not getting involved in it. Are they wrong? Is that a sin? Are we? Well, I saw it. I didn't do it. Why am I guilty? I'm being a lawyer up here. Mm-hmm. 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 Should. Mm-hmm. Should. What you call that? I guess I'll put this in called a hierarchy here. You have two types of sins primarily, if you want to group it in that fashion. Of course, we know sin is sin, right? But in teaching, they give you two forms of. You have a sin of commission, and you have a sin of omission. And they are different, but both of them are a sin. A sin of commission is you willfully committed a sin, so therefore you are guilty for what it is that you did. Omission is you are guilty of sin for what it is you didn't do. Give you an example. Let's say, for example, I'm going to tell Joyce, I'm going to break in Miss Susie's house. I'm going to steal her lawnmower. I'm serious. I'm going to do it. And Joyce sits there, and here's the whole thing. I am guilty of sin of commission because it's what I did. She is guilty of sin of omission for what she didn't do. So what she didn't do? She knew I was going to do it. I talked about it the whole time, but you did nothing knowing I was about to do wrong. You turned a blind eye to it. When you know you should have did something about it. And those who know they should do something about it, you said that your conscience bothered them. For the believer, it's the spirit that pricks you. You say, well, I know I should have said something. I should have done something there, but I didn't. But here you'll find it says, put not thy hand with the wicked to be unrighteous witness. In other words, don't join in with this. Why you want to be a part of it? Oftentimes you'll find people will do that type of things. You'll find that two of the worst cases, I guess biblically, is one is Naboth. Naboth, you might find that in Kings 21, I believe. But anyway, in this story, to speed things up, Naboth had a vineyard. Oh, and it was a beautiful vineyard. And this vineyard bush was right up against the king's house, or we would say the king's palace. King Ahab wanted this vineyard. But I'm going to give, honestly, he was fair about it. He said, I want this vineyard. Mind you, he's king. So he tells Naboth, said, I want your vineyard. Tell you what, give me your vineyard, and I'll give you another one even better than that. Now someone said, now wait a minute, if he has one better, why he wants his? Well, the reason why he wants his is that the one that's better is not beside his house. It's somewhere else. So he said, I want this one because this one beside my house. He said, plus, if you don't want to take what I have to give you, I'll give you a fair price for it. Otherwise, I'm going to pay you money for it. Naboth tells him, I can't give you my inheritance because that's against the law. I don't have time to go into the year of Jubilee and things of that nature, how the inheritance passed from one family member to another. But by law, he couldn't give his way or sell his inheritance in that fashion. The king then becomes a child. He goes home, mouth all poked out. They say lays in his bed. His head faces the wall. He won't even eat. He's so upset. Oh, but he had a wife by the name of Jezebel. Jezebel's a bad woman. I always think of Jezebel. I always think of Dick and Hayes. Dick and Hayes said, I ain't never seen a mother name a child Jezebel. So Jezebel's a bad woman. So Jezebel tells the king, say, ain't you the king? Said, what you want, you can have. So what she does is she writes out a false report saying that this man committed blasphemy against the king and against God. She seals it with the king's ring. She then has it delivered to the elders of the community to bring him out before everybody else and read the letter. And they do that. And guess what they do? They stone him to death. That's mean do not put thy hand, let's say, put not thy hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness. They're all joining in to support a lie. And when they know, guess what? It's a lie. But they still willfully carried it out. An even worse case, Jesus Christ. You know about his fake trial, right? The false trial and the false witnesses that you'll find that, let me see, I know where one of the gospels that's at. Matthew 26, just a couple of verses here, he said, now the chief priests and the elders and the council. You see we have here, right? All the leaders there. This is Jesus about to go on trial, or in part of the trial. It says, sought false witnesses against Jesus to put him to death, but found none. Yea, though many false witnesses came, yet found they none. At the last came 2 false witnesses. In other words, everybody just joining in, supporting this lie, and knew it was a lie. But unfortunately, guess what? Their witnesses didn't agree. And why they didn't agree? I'm going to go to hell on this one, Gigi, because it was a lie. Because you know what about a lie? To keep a lie true, if I can use that term, is a hard thing to do. Well, the truth never changes. But a lie, you always have to be careful what you say it because you'll get in trouble behind it. The witnesses never could agree because everybody was doing what? Lying. If you tell the truth is just what it is. It's the truth. But here you'll find that they joined in to be an unrighteous witness to the Almighty God. Now, we could go over case by case by case by case of our people, right? False witnesses, false report. I think it never fails. Each month, there's always somebody get out of jail that wasn't supposed to be in jail because of a false report. And one of the worst ones, I'm not even going to see the movie because I'll probably get mad and cause some harm somewhere. You'll see me in the news in jail. Emmett Till story's coming out. You know about that one. This black boy whistled at me, made accusations. Then this woman get up in age, and then she's about to pass away. I guess the spirit convicted so much, she said, well, I lied. He never whistled at me. Never did anything. You follow me? Look at Ahmaud Arbery. Gunned down for robbing a vacant home under construction. Now, can't mind you, ain't nothing in the home to steal, but he robbed his house. The mother go through grief for 75 days, thinking her son was in the wrong and lost his life. And it all was what? It was a lie. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. But these are the things that God speaks out against. But as we go into verse 2, I'm going to read back through verse 1. Thou shalt not raise a false report. Put not thy hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness. Thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil. What Big Mama said, they jump off a bridge, you can jump off one too? That's the easy one. People always, well, I shouldn't say always, many times people will follow the multitude. What the crowd do, that's what they'll do. Even with Christ, people follow Christ, didn't they? Did everybody follow him for the same reason? Some follow him because they want to be healed. Some follow because they want to see a miracle done. Some follow him because they want to hear the word. Some follow him because they believe he's the Son of God. Some follow him because guess what? Everybody else following him. I'm going to follow too. And you find in life these same things go on. What was it, January the 6th of 2020? A mob attacked the capital of these United States. You tell me everybody was on the same accord there? A lot of them just was following the crowd. You know, you see it oftentimes in the fraternities. They do the hazing. And sometimes you know what you're doing is wrong. You're hurting a child. Many kids have died, as we know. But guess what? People follow the crowd, go along with it. Peer pressure, no different. Kids say, we're not going to school. You're not going to school? Well, I'm not going to school either. You're not going? Well, I'm not going either. Before we know it, nobody's going to school. All because peer pressure, following the crowd. Kind of makes us wonder. We would think something like this happened back then. We know what happened today, but 2,000-something years ago, that was going on, people following the crowd. The word says that nothing new under the sun. What has been has already happened at one point in time. It says, thou shalt not follow a multitude of evil. Once again, a direct command. So by telling you what not to do, they should be telling you also what you should do. That is not follow the crowd. Think for yourself. I told you before at work, when we get on politics, I'll speed this story up. They kind of, not open it, but they knocked me because they know I side with the Democrats. But I tell them, I said, I'm a thinking Democrat, unlike you Republicans. I said, what I mean by that is I have seen things that Republicans have said or come up with a plan. I said, you know something? That is a good idea. Very good idea. I said, I've seen plans Republicans come up with. I say, no, in the world, that's going to work. I said, I have seen Democrats who I side with come up with a plan. I said, I'm going to follow that plan 100%. Then I've seen plans where I've said these words. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life to do. But the point is, I can think for myself. I said, whereas you Republicans, if Trump might say you disguise plaid, you go, you know something, you're right about that. It is plaid. I said, you can't think for yourself. You're just following the crowd without even knowing the fact itself. And oftentimes you'll find that can't be the case in life. Here, back in those days, it's still the same thing. Thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil. And God knows the children of Israel will follow the crowd. Because one minute, all of them would say in our previous lessons, we would do what thus saith the Lord, right? And then someone go the other way, and what happens? Everybody followed the crowd going the wrong way. Even with Moses and Aaron, when they was confronted by Korah and the family. In other words, this was a group, I don't have time to go into this whole story. They came up to Moses and Aaron and said, well, who y'all think y'all to lead us? We all are the children of Israel. We all are holy. I don't think you should be boss. I should be running things. And before you know it, everybody was right behind that family chanting, yeah, we following them. What are they doing? Following the crowd. But God says here, thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil. Neither shalt thou speak in a cause to decline after many to wrest judgment. Anybody know what that means? It's kind of repeating itself a little bit. It says, thou shalt speak, wait a minute, neither shalt thou speak in a cause to decline after many to wrest judgment. You know what they're speaking of here? It's dealing with that, but to add to that, what it's dealing with is you're trying to sway things in your direction. It's like perverting someone's testimony. In other words, I want you now to, you know it's wrong, but speak up on my behalf. Help me out. That's what he's speaking of. Sometimes people, politicians will often do these things. Of course, remember this is about the judicial system. They will come and tell you anything to get you on their side. And what they're doing is telling you what? A lie. I watched one just the other night because, you know, elections coming up. Please, folks, vote. Please vote. 6 coming up. But I saw one of the politicians said, the first day I get in office, the first thing I'm going to do is this, and this. My first thought was, that is a lie. What you should be is honest and see what happens. But nobody wants to be honest because honesty doesn't win you elections. What you should say is, when I get in office, and if I get in office, I'm going to try my best to bring about this, and that. But what you have to understand is, I can't do it alone. I have to have the support of the people, and you have to vote to get people in to help these things go this way. Because when people are running for office, they always say, I'm going to do this, like they're all powerful. But our judicial system is not set up, or our democratic system is not set up that way. One person is not all powerful. But they would tell the people what they want to hear. So I'm going to do all these things for you. And then when they can't do it, they say, well, he ran on this and he didn't deliver. Because he didn't have the power to do it in the first place. They started off by telling you a lie. If you just be honest, say, well, I'm going to try my best to do this, and this because it needs to be done, and explain your situation. And I think, guess what, that'll come across more favorably. But people look at that as being what? Weak. So he didn't stand for anything. He's going to try. I want somebody to say they can do it. So what you're doing there is you're giving an itchy ear towards a lie, and you're basically supporting that lie by even going for it in the first place. But he said, neither shalt thou speak in a cause to decline after many to wrest judgment. Neither shalt thy countenance a poor man in his cause. Uh-oh. What does that mean? I'm going to tell you what it means, but I'm not really going to explain it until I get a little bit further on in the lesson. It says, neither shalt thou countenance a poor man in his cause. Now, of course, I hope you might have used another translation of the Bible because King James can be difficult and understand what they're saying here. But anybody have an idea what's going on here? King Jones? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. He's 100% correct with that. But the reason why I'm not going to explain it at this point, because later on it speaks of that again in verse 6. It said, thou shalt not wrest the judgment of the poor in his cause. What they're dealing with here is they should have put them together. But one is basically speaking of, the first one is speaking of that you have such compassion for the poor that you are too lenient with them. You follow me? In other words, they may have done something wrong, but you have such compassion for them there that you are lenient and you won't do what it is you're supposed to do as far as judgment being placed upon him. The other one in verse 6 when it said, thou shalt not wrest the judgment of thy poor in his cause, what that speaks of is on the other realm is you're showing favoritism or bias toward the one that's poor. That's why justice is supposed to be what? Blind. Because when you see things, you tend to think in a different manner. But what I want to speak about before I get to this is on the other side of the table. Who always gets away with things? Exactly. Why does the rich always get away? Because it's just that they're rich. Just that they're rich. Deacon Bush? Mm-hmm. 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 So they have something to offer. What does the poor have to offer? Nothing. And unfortunately, that when it comes down to finances, the poor have nothing to offer me. But the rich do. And the rich also sometimes can be consequences. You go against them, they can come back against you. You know, I hate to use Trump for everything, but you see that continually with him. Just the other week, he was subpoenaed. And what happened? I mean, this subpoenaed, I don't know, for the 18th time, let's say. He doesn't show up. Bottom of the screen, they said he's been given an extension to next week. I said, that's why he keep doing it. Nobody wants to bother him. He said, you're subpoenaed, come in court. But I tell you this, let one of you get subpoenaed to go to court and don't show up. I guarantee you, Hanover will give you a free ride to the courthouse in the back seat of a car. Mm-hmm. But that's how the system works. But God tells you that's not the way it's supposed to be. He's telling his people we have a theocratic government, a theocracy that's run by God. It doesn't operate the same way as man does things. God is just with the way he does things. So when he says here, once again, in verse 3, neither shalt thou countenance a poor in his cause. In other words, that speaks of that poor person now, let's say if they are guilty. They are guilty, just like the one who's rich is guilty. So you can't sympathize with them or be lenient because of that situation that they are in. Because right is what? And wrong is what? Wrong is wrong. And God is saying that's the way that he sees it. It says here, verse 3, neither shalt thou countenance a poor man in his cause. Say, if thou meet thy enemy's ox or his ass going astray, thou shalt surely bring it back to him again. Now, what does that mean? Now, before somebody says, if thou meet thy enemy's ox or his ass going astray, that's not calling the man the ass, okay? So let's keep it clean, okay? So, but you see his animal here is gone astray. Thou shalt surely bring it back to him. What is that saying? Returns one property. Anybody can add what Sandra brought up because she's right. What's it saying here? Remember, we talked about the law talks about what you can't do and what it is you're supposed to be doing. God's showing you here that in his law, you're supposed to be bigger, just so he said, than the bad guy. You're supposed to be bigger than your enemy. Because your enemy is not going to think about anything about you. But God is basically saying, to a certain extent, you kill him with kindness. Because you know that what is the right thing to do? Is the right thing to give it back? Or to say, that's his, I'm not worried about it anymore. Or is the right thing to say, hey, here's your animal, bring it back? Because remember, this is something of great value. This is an agricultural society. They deal a lot with the animals. So now this man's animal has gone astray. Do you return it back to him? God said, this is what you ought to do. Because his people are to be different. You'll find with God's laws, I always say another reason for the laws is God's people are supposed to do what? Stand out, right? They're supposed to stand out, to be different. This is one of the reasons, well, many of the reasons why you'll find with the children of Israel, they had to look a certain way. They looked different from everybody else. They had to groom themselves a certain way because they looked different than everybody else. They had to dress in a certain way. It made them look different than everybody else. When they came to worship, they worshiped, according to God's way, different from everybody else. They treated their fellow man, guess what? Different than everybody else. The widow's in bad shape. Society, group, community, pull together. This is what you're to do. You're put in that position so you could what? Stand out. Be different. In God's law, he said, no, this is what you do. You see this is something that's wrong here. Even though you might not like this individual, the right thing to do as a child of who? God, is to give it back. Or you're just in the world. You know, you don't stand out. This might be off chart here a little bit. I was at a funeral yesterday, and the preacher brought up about standing out because the young man who passed was short. His mother short. His two brothers were short. And the pastor, Pastor Parker, church up here right beside Second Mount Zion on the corner, 30. He's been here before. He was preaching the service. And he said, sometimes you stand out in different ways. He said, I'm a short man. He said, if it wasn't for me being short, none of you in here would stand out. He said, short people make you who you are. Because if not, you'll be average, just like everybody else. So sometimes, guess what? You have to be seen and stand out. And God's people need to be seen and be different from the world. God said in his law, you got to be different. You have to stand out. You can't follow in the footsteps that they are doing. So he says in there, return it back to him. And verse 5 just kind of elaborates even further on that. It says, if thou see the ass of him that hateth thee, lying under his burden, and wouldest forbear to help him, thou shalt surely help with him. So now you see this man animals going through a burden and having a hard time pulling this load. He said, what you supposed to do? You help him out. It's kind of like saying, Dick Bush, somebody that how'd they put it here? If thou see him that hateth thee, this person hates you, they're caught in the ditch and they stuck. You come by in the big four-wheel drive, 250 Ford, four-wheel drive, even got a rope on the back. Are you supposed to put them out the ditch? Or you just keep on going? That blow the horn, keep going. Oh, my goodness. But the point is saying, you're supposed to help them out. You're being different. Some say you kill them with kindness. But as we close up, or getting close to close now, he says in verse 6, thou shalt not rest the judgment of thy poor in his cause. Now, the first one we talked about dealt with actually being too lenient with those who are poor. But what is this one saying? Mm-hmm. Well, what it basically saying is, it's saying that thou shalt not rest the judgment of the poor in his cause. It's basically saying that same thing you're saying, but it's speaking more of a fashion of just because you are poor don't mean you get a free ride. God's showing you that he judges the rich, he judges the poor. He reigns on the just, and he reigns on the unjust. But he said, just because you're poor, don't think for some reason you're getting off scot-free here. Although I'm not going to play on a sympathy role here. And let's be honest, people do that, don't they? The rich do that too, don't they? Let me give you a couple examples. And y'all may hate me for saying this, but I'm going to say it. It's amazing how when our rich folk get in trouble, how all of a sudden they become so poor and place sympathy upon, the, let's say, the jury of the courthouse. You see it time and time again. Give you an example. We all love, I mentioned earlier, Michael Jackson, don't we? You remember Michael Jackson got in trouble? You remember how he came to the courtroom? He came, back then, we didn't wear masks back then. He came with a mask on, pajamas, slippers, walking like this. And everybody said, oh, poor Michael. Michael got off. Next thing I saw, Michael was on top of the car, Butch, dancing and doing all this. I thought he was sick. You know. You remember Bill Cosby, right? Bill got in trouble. Next thing I see Bill, they got a man holding his arm. I always laughed because that man reminded me of Smooth. Looked just like Smooth. That man holding his arm, Bill walking like this. Like he can't see, got a cane. There's nothing wrong with Bill. Harvey Weinstein, y'all know him, right? He pretty much ran Hollywood. You want to be in a movie, a production used to come through Harvey. Harvey kind of a bigger, older guy. Harvey come to court. Harvey come in there, Bush with a walker like this. I said, when did he become sick? And y'all remember the thug of thugs, guy by the name of Suge Knight? Been in trouble time and time again. 6'7", 290-pound muscle man. Ran over top two guys with the car, with the truck, backed over top of him, killed the man. Going to court again. He comes in the court. He faints in the chair. Claim now he's a diabetic and all these problems. Mm-hmm. All because of what? What they're trying to do is place sympathy upon those that are poor, less fortunate. Help me out. You see the man's in bad shape. Oh, this man, I know he killed so many people, but he's 80 years old. Let him live his life out. Right is right. Now, These words I'm giving you out of the scripture are not my words. They're who words? God's saying these things. I'm just breaking it down for you. He said, thou shalt not rest the judgment of the poor in his cause. And they kind of breathe through these next ones. He said, keep thee far from a false matter. We know what that means, right? When it comes to lying, stay away from it. He said, just stay away from it. And the innocent and the righteous slay thou not, for I will not justify the wicked. So God is saying here, you can go ahead and, I shouldn't say, he's not saying do these things, but if you do these things, guess what? I see it. And I don't justify it. And the day is going to come when you're going to stand before God. That's pretty much what he's saying here. But as he goes on, oops, I got to change my pages here. Y'all know technology is great when it works. I said my page locked up for a second. Then it says, and thou shalt take no gift, for the gift blindeth the wise and pervert the words of judgment. That's an easy one, isn't it? Take no bribes. Take no gifts. You know, hey, you let so-and-so off, I'll make sure that this goes your way. You know, or they put a little money in your account to do so and so and so on. That's been going on. Well, it's been going on in biblical times, right? Even to this very day, you'll find that there are those who will accept finances, money, and gifts that cause a perversion of justice. Because it says in the end, and thou shalt take no gift, for the gift blindeth the wise and perverteth the words of the righteous. So even the wise people can mess up. You know, that money in your face, you go, whew. Mm-hmm. Who was the wisest man to ever live? Solomon, right? Did he mess up? Yes, he did. Messed up royally. Mm-hmm. Even the wise can make bad mistakes. And our last verse, we'll close this out. Also, thou shalt not oppress a stranger, for you know the heart of a stranger, seeing you were strangers in the land of Egypt. So he's saying here and there, don't be hard on the strangers, because you know exactly what it is they're going through, because you yourself was once in that same situation. That kind of goes back to the golden rule of do unto others as you have them do unto you. Mm-hmm. You don't about to treat you bad? Don't treat them bad. He said you should understand that seeing you yourself was a stranger in the land of Egypt. So he mentioned the land of Egypt. He let them know, guess what? This is where you once were at yourself. But guess what? I'm the one that brought you out of it. And these are the commands that they are supposed to adhere to. These are the very same commands that when Moses came to in our earlier lessons, and they said, will you do the things that God said? And they said, we will surely do them. He said, are you sure? He said, yes, we will. Moses wrote those things out, then read it to them. Said, are you sure? They said, we will do everything that the Lord said. Then they sealed it with a sacrifice. And all Moses is doing now is going back over these very same things that they had already agreed to. But they were called about to be different. They were called about to be obedient in society and obedience in justice. And God's justice is truly, you could say, like the symbol of justice. He has a scale. That scale is equal. It doesn't tilt one way to the left. He has the sword, which he has the power to execute judgment. And also God says, I'm not a respecter of person. So regardless of who you are, rich, poor, healthy, issues, whatever it may be, right is right and wrong is wrong, because God is out for justice. Not as man. Remember in our opening? Man just tried to do what? Win the case. It's all about his winning. You're guilty? Well, I know you're guilty, but guess what? I can get you off. Why? Because they didn't reach your rights when they put you in the car. Even though you did shoot that person. I'm going to let you off. Why? Oh, I didn't give him those words, so you got to let him go free. I know this person over here is guilty. I have evidence, but I'm not going to present it. Why? Because I want him to get off. That's how I keep my business going. Keep money coming in my pocket. But God's words is not their way. That's why we're dealing with obedience in justice. And remember, the overall theme is learning to honor God. And this is how we honor God, by following these steps. Now, our lesson for next week deals with obedience. As this goes on. Obedience in rest. We're coming out of still Exodus, the 31st chapter, verses 12 through 18. And with those words being said, it's now running on 10 minutes till. Once again, I hope you all have gained something from these words that was brought forth here this day. And with those words being said, may we rise to our feet. And Deacon Bush, if you will, take us out and then into our worship service.